Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to this online campaign for Bahruz Samadov, who is a peace activist and researcher from Azerbaijan that was detained last Monday, 23rd of June in Baku after long trials. He was charged with 15 years in jail with the fake charges of treason, because he was a peace activist, because he demanded peace and he was standing against the war. As most of you know here today, who are familiar with his case, who knows Bahruz personally, we all come together today to show our solidarity with Bahruz and all other political prisoners in Azerbaijan. So yes, today it's a bit difficult for us to reflect on it, just knowing that our friend, our colleague, our comrade is in prison, and knowing that they also attempted to commit suicide for this injustice imprisonment. And we are familiar that he started a hunger strike, but then recently he stopped the hunger strike. And the most recent information we know is that he has been removed from his initial prison, and has been relocated to another prison, which is in the middle of nowhere, and it's really hard for his family and friends to reach him there. So the idea, what we see, is that Azerbaijani government is completely isolating him and isolating his case. And they also try to create this fear among the peace-building community, among the anti-war community, so that the Armenians and Azerbaijanis completely lose touch with each other. So they fear that any connection between Azerbaijanis and Armenians might mean a treason. To be honest, we are all very familiar with this narrative for so many years. We know that already communicating with Armenians, or for Armenians to communicate with Azerbaijanis, could be regarded as being a traitor. So this is not something new, but what is new is that now Azerbaijani government is specifically targeting Bahruz and people like Bahruz who demand peace, and punish them really brutally, knowing that they have no guilt whatsoever. And this is why we are here today. This is why we are here today, to demand freedom to Bahruz. And I really appreciate all of you who joined today. Thank you so much for joining. So today we will all of us briefly talk about what we feel about the case of Bahruz, what's going on. We want to show our message, share our message across the borders, and also because we are very frustrated with what is going on. Besides Bahruz's case, in the deadlock negotiation between Azerbaijan and Armenia, we will also declare our own peace declaration, people's peace declaration, at the end of it. So stay tuned, and if you have any questions at the end, you will have a chance to also pose your questions in the chat. But yeah, this is a brief introduction of the situation, what we are facing now. So again, thank you so much for everyone who joined. I would like to open the floor for everyone to briefly comment about what they feel about the current situation and how they know Bahruz, and what are their messages now, both to Azerbaijani and Armenian public and the internationals who are familiar or maybe not familiar with the context. I would like to start. I don't know whoever would like to start first. It's always a bit hard to start, but you can raise your hand if you want to start.
Thank you, Sevinç. I can start if that's fine. And first of all, good evening, everyone, and thank you for hosting this important and I think much needed event. And for me, it is not just an event, but it is an act of solidarity, as you mentioned. And I want to express my gratitude for bringing us together. And first, I wanted to clarify that I'm speaking here today in my personal capacity, and I don't represent any organization or institution. And I speak solely as an individual committed to peace between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Today, we stand in unity, Armenians and Azerbaijanis alike, to speak out against the injustice faced by our colleague and friend, Bahruz Samadov. And our unity is our strength, and this joint stand for justice and peace is, I think, a powerful statement that peace is not just a hope, but it is a shared commitment. I would like to share my personal story with Bahruz. I first came to know Bahruz during an online discussion organized by the Tampere Peace Research Institute right after the 44-day war between Armenia and Azerbaijan. And I had been invited to speak on the theme of peace after war. At that time, as all of us, I think, I was devastated, heartbroken, and completely disoriented by the aftermath of the war. And Bahruz was participating as an Azerbaijani panelist. As the conversation began, I felt that something shifted. For the first time in a long while, I felt I was in a space where I could speak openly and be understood. And the atmosphere was entirely different from the hostile and militarized narratives dominating in our media, as you all know. And in that moment, I realized how powerful, honest, and open dialogue could be. Bahruz offered a glimpse of future where we can talk, listen, and build something together without pointing fingers or defending borders. And for me, he became a source of hope, a light at the end of the tunnel in the midst of despair and confusion. I think that his courage and clarity encouraged me to continue engaging, even when it felt too painful. This is why Bahruz's imprisonment is such a devastating blow. I think not only to those who know him personally, but to everyone who believes in peace. When voices like his are silenced, what message does it send to others? It says, like, don't speak out, don't hope, don't imagine peace. And yet we hear governments talk about a peace agenda. But how can we believe in a sustainable peace when the people who are building this foundation are being punished? So when I learned about Bahruz's sentence, this 15 years in prison for speaking up, I felt a very deep and personal loss. I felt like hope had been has been put on trial, and hope for a peace that is not imposed from above through power and calculations, but one that is built on ordinary people, their needs, experiences, and aspirations. But I think we should not give up, and we have to keep hope alive. We must nurture it by coming together like we are doing today, by working together, and by continuing to speak even when it is hard. And I believe that our collective voices are stronger than fear. And I also believe that our voices cannot be silenced. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Marina. Thank you for this really, really powerful speech. And yes, it's really devastating for us, but as you said, we keep the hope alive, and this event is one of the continuity of the hope that we want to build and remain. Diana, would you like to go second here?
Yes, so I also wanted to say how I'm grateful just sharing this space with all of you, especially in such difficult times, and picking up on what Marina said. So I know Bahruz since 2018, and since then he was such a dear friend of mine, and we shared so many difficult moments. And when the war broke out in 2020, he was devastated, and me too, and it was very important to share these moments together. And also on what Marina mentioned, I want to say we are indeed witnessing a very ironic situation right now where our Azerbaijani and Armenian governments are engaged in negotiations for peace, but at the same time we have individuals like Bahruz who dare to speak in favor of peace. They are being branded as traitors and thrown into the jail. And I think what is really interesting is when somebody or something is being labeled as anomaly, this actually tells us a lot about the normativity, about what is actually, it exposes the boundaries of what is considered normative, acceptable and legitimate in a given political and historical context. And, you know, this kind of voices like Bahruz's and other peace activists, they who are often labeled as unpatriotic, subversive, they are actually, in fact, revealing the both internal contradictions, but also insecurities and fragilities of these dominant power structures. And I think what makes voices such as Bahruz's and countless many other voices so powerful is, ironically, is exactly their marginal status within this nationalistic and militaristic imaginary, just for the reason that these voices are disrupting this very carefully presented illusion of order that the state and the regime is trying to reproduce. And to understand, I think for us particularly, is very important to understand and talk and discuss the mechanisms and strategies that the regimes and the media are using to label and dismiss these voices. And I think this is one of the things that our collective communication and dialogue can be very useful in helping each other in revealing this mechanism that the state media are using to label these people as anomalies in sidelining them. And what I'm very appreciating is, despite all the hostilities and hatred and the continuous attacks, is that our community is not only remaining together, but we are actually becoming stronger. That's how I personally feel. And I always felt that this community was such a space where each of us could speak openly without censoring our voices. And I think this speaks a lot how we feel empathetic and comfortable just being in the same space, right? In opposite to what the nationalistic imaginary is trying to portray this space. And I think that I always felt that this is a space where nobody is imposing their rightness, but this is a space where we all can listen and learn from each other. And just to finish, I want just to thank really everyone who is standing together, but also I want to address those people who are watching in silence, which is very understandable, and this is what the regime is trying to do. But I hope that the time will come when you will also feel comfortable to speak up, and at that time your voice will be so much more powerful. And I think that in the end, just wanting peace is never a crime. And more we speak up, and more it will be harder for this regime to actually explain the multiplicity of such anomalies as we are. So thank you everyone very much.
Thank you, Diana. Really, really very powerful words. And I completely agree that these voices that are disrupting the normativity, as you said, is the biggest threat for them, for the regimes that tries to keep their compliance and to silence people, basically. And here the peace is not just a romantic idea that we want. It's not something idealized, romantic, abstract idea. It's actually quite material. We want this war to end. We want this war to stop. And if this is an anomaly, then that is how we will challenge the normativity that exists. Yes. And who would like to continue? Please just open your mic and speak. Anush, yes, please.
Yeah, I can go next. As was already said by Sevinch, I think it's very difficult for all of us to protest what has happened, even though we were waiting already for nearly a year. But the decision to sentence Bahruz for 15 years at least hit me really hard, even though I was psychologically preparing myself. I also know Bahruz for a few years now. We met in 2020 as we have been sharing different similar networks. And we met each other through a common friend. And ever since then, like for many of the people here, especially during the 2020 war and also beyond, he has been a glimmer of hope for me in the region, and he was a very safe space to rely on, engaging in a very difficult work that we are doing. These days, ever since he's been detained and there has been no possibility of talking to him, I have been reading his works a lot. I have been reading as much as I'm able to find on different sources, media platforms, which I would encourage everyone to do. And maybe I will read one or a couple of sentences in one of his works that he published in 2020 during the war, which was a call for all of us in our community to not give up working tirelessly for peace. And he was calling all of us to be compassionate in the work that we do. And he says, we must demonstrate compassion and patience and remember the trauma stays with us. So I think that when we engage in this work, we must remember that we are working with societies and people who are traumatized, more or less, having seen direct violence, having gone through multiple multi-layered displacements, and there are people who have still missing persons in their lives whom they're searching for over 30 years. So I think that we must exercise this compassion when we approach our societies. And I think that what is important to say is to show that it is not a crime to work on it. On the contrary, I think that the society, like our community, is being also sidelined in a way because we are shown as people who go up against our own societies. But on the contrary, a message that I would like to give out is that actually these people really care about everyone. They care about the people of Armenia and Azerbaijan and want to break the mainstream narrative, mainstream narratives that keep the war ongoing. As Marina said, Bahruz being on trial and being charged, for me, that felt not only that hope is on trial, but also all of us are on trial. And now getting together in this space shows that we will not give up, and there will be many more, and it is impossible to silence this community. As Diana also said, there are many people who are silently watching and silently following and silently supporting. And I hope that by multiplying and getting to our communities with the compassion Bahruz was writing about, we will be able to give a different imagination and give possibility and space for people to imagine a different future. I wouldn't say this is a never-ending war, but it is an intractable conflict, which Bartal talks about in his work when discussing the social psychology of war and conflict. And I think we need to also be patient in understanding that our communities are having difficulty imagining a different future because living in a culture of conflict where conflict has been normalized over decades. Imagining peace is more difficult because we know better how to deal with the war. We know better how to deal with the image of the enemy than to challenge it, because we do not have a narrative of what we do with that. And Bahruz was trying to challenge this, and this is why he was isolated, and this is why he is behind the bars now. So I think I would also make a call saying to all of us to have the power and to have the courage to imagine a different future, to imagine a more peaceful future when people are not dying anymore in our region, no more bloodshed. So I think I would leave this message, and I would say that Bahruz has actually been fighting for many people, and him being jailed, many of us feel like we have also, but we haven't. And I think that we should not give up this tireless work he was calling for.
Yeah, thank you, Anush. As you speak, I don't know, I also, like, while you speak, I already get this hope, and as you mentioned, the imagination, I think this is something that They are trying to kill, they are trying to erase a different alternative imagination, and that's why we are here, and we will be, as you said, as Diana said, Marina already mentioned, we will be, and maybe not us individually, but they will be others always. They will be always the continuity of the struggle for peace. Who would like to continue?
Shall I pick up?
Yes, please, Mate.
Hello, everyone. I got to know Bahruz as basically an unstoppable force, really. That's how he was standing out. Like that was the distinguishing character that I saw in him. In the sense that he would be really courageous, and he would never, withdraw from whatever he thinks to be true. And he would just really go and fight for it till the end. And which is actually, in a way, what he did, right? And it deserves appreciation and, our care, because he is now put in a kind of a difficult, challenging situation right now, which might last for a time, who knows until when. And he is now in need of our care. And, that's the thing with the prisons, I believe. Prisons are basically segregative institutions, in the sense that their primary function is to segregate who are deemed to be criminals from ordinary citizens. And, along the way, they might be rehabilitated or anything like that. But for political prisoners, there is no such thing, because political prisoners, they don't accept, they don't consider their actions to be crimes, so as their communities, so as we can see it right now. And as Diana and some others mentioned, Bahruz was in prison for defending peace. And this gives like a weird truth to us, that war is normal for a social setting. At least it appears to be, These states are trying to enforce this idea. But anyway, to my point is that we really need to think about multiple ways of freeing Bahruz, maybe. I mean, the segregation, the isolation of the political elites. I mean, the Azerbaijani state imprisoned Bahruz because they thought he might be a really influential figure. He might have an influence over Azerbaijani society, and they were afraid of that. And and they think, if they put him in jail, they will silence him, it will be done. But it might not be the case, and it's really up to us, people who are not in prison, to make it so. And that would be, of course, just as we do right now, making a campaign, long-lasting campaign for Bahruz to free him from prison, which he should not be there at all, just as other peace activists. And also, perhaps, fighting for peace, just as Bahruz did, just as in the way that he committed himself for peace. So that, when you have so many people who are demanding peace, making it the normal, which it should be. I mean, when we talk with each other, no one would really, consider actions in the war to be acceptable for themselves. But anyway, so we need to be freeing Bahruz in multiple ways, both for campaigning for himself and then really working and fighting for peace. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Mete. I think this is a very good strategy, what you're suggesting. Campaigning for freeing Bahruz, of course, and campaigning for peace now will go side by side for us, and it will not stop.
So there is a hand with the attendees. The tech wants to speak, and I'm unmuting him to speak next, okay?
Who would like to speak? Sorry.
Vitek from the
Vitek also. Yes, please, Vitek, go ahead.
I don't know. I cannot see, but I have a camera. I don't know, but I cannot now. So sorry. I should have possibility to see. I mean, I see you, but you cannot see me. But what I want to say, first of all, it's hard to say. I'm quite devastated because in a way, I'm already long time ago inspired by Azerbaijani and Armenian curators. We did together the festival that was called Transcaucasia and was in Warsaw, in Prague, in Vienna, in many other places, but somehow inspired by the curators from mainly from Armenia and from Azerbaijan. We started the festival that is called One Caucasus, and some of you were there. We started 2014. We did it in the borderland of Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan. And Bahruz joined us in 2015. And he was already a democratic activist from Nida. But it was this experience in One Caucasus where he just started to completely, let's say, reshaped his whole mission. And for you to know, I'm even not sure, Diana, if you didn't meet him also in 2016 where you were there, but because I think he was also that time. But in 2015 he was volunteer. But he changed not only our small, let's say, small group of the activists who somehow are, this 1% who are on the right side of the history. But for example, we had that time, first time, Armenian and Azerbaijani rock bands. And it was, for example, Bambir, that probably people from Armenia will all recognize. They came to me and say, oh, what's going on? Why this is Azerbaijani volunteers are so big fans of our performance, of our music? That was the trigger for Bambir to invite Azerbaijani rockers on a stage. And that was the time where we had the first, in many years, rock jam that back when Yerevan was playing together. And to be very clear, we never, as the organizers, asked Armenians or Azerbaijani bands to perform before that day because we knew that it can be a very risky thing. So, for us, it was kind of amazing experience. But I remember the last day of the festival when we brought everybody, every volunteer who was helping on stage. So you can imagine there was this, dozens of people on the stage. And what happened in the end, it was Misha Aslikian, who is Armenian from Marneuli, from Georgia, and Bahruz, who stepped in front of everybody else. And Bahruz took mic and said, I'm Azerbaijani. Misha took mic and he said, I'm Armenian. And they hacked together, And I now understand this fucking 15 years, sorry for my expression. It's basically for this. It's only for this. It's nothing more. And it's, I'm really so grateful for you, for the Feminist Peace Collective, that you do this meeting today. And, I would like you very much to just keep being organized, give the information, make, possible situations. I don't know how, use us. I mean, I can speak definitely from a core team of One Caucasus. Some of us have a human rights background, together with Rick Roth, who is also an One Caucasus, let's say, a small charity founder in United States. We were starting Right for Rights, which is now the biggest human rights global action of Amnesty International. So I definitely would be very happy if this year, one of these 12 cases, unfortunately, it's in December, but hopefully maybe something will change. But to keep it, to keep backwards, maybe one of these 12 international cases, because I remember when we had Emin and Adnan years ago, it was a time where I think that speed up the release of them, because they were anyway supposed to be released, but it's speed up like 1 year. Now we have a 15 years. So I think, the efforts has to be done. I just prepared some, graphic designs, more like a free Bahruz, let's say sticker or something, but let's keep it, let's have it on our profiles, this kind of messages, and let's just work on this, because it's not, it's not only, of course, about, just say we don't agree, but it is a complex work for advocacy, for fighting, for working. And just please remember, as long as we will be able to keep one Caucasus going, as you can imagine, Georgia, it's a little bit more difficult conditions now. But next year, this year we do the really break, but next year in August we want to meet again in the borderland. But we also are open to another hope, another help. I think it's very much important that we unite different initiatives, that we are showing what we can do, and for you just to remember to keep it in mind, to come next one Caucasus in 2026, because I think it's also very important for people like you to see how many other people are like you, and that how many people are, you know, that this is the really the power of the future of this region. So yeah, so that's all from my side, and I will send to Peace Collective or to Sevinch or this, you know, the design and stuff like that. So yeah, thank you so much. Çok sağ ol and merci.
Thank you, Vitek. Thank you so much for all these efforts and for the suggestion, for the strategizings, that we have to indeed put our efforts together, because we are all familiar with at least few of the initiatives that exist in the Caucasus region for peace. And of course, One Caucasus is one of them. We are very familiar with all the work that you guys have been doing. And of course, one thing is that already mentioned before, how the peace process itself has been disconnected, both on the allied level peace building and also NGO level peace building has always been disconnected from public for years and years and years in repetition. But projects like One Caucasus try to break through it and bring communities together to some extent, of course, again, with limited capacity, but still. And when we don't have a chance for dialogue, when we don't have a chance for communication, it's really easy to be isolated, and then, of course, be an abnormal case or anomaly, as Diana was saying. So yeah, thank you so much, Vitek, again. By the way, this is not just the Feminist Peace Collective initiative. There is also Caucasus Talk. There are also some other initiatives that are in the region. So definitely, it's beyond just one initiative or someone's passionate desire for peace. It's much more than that. So thank you. Aram, please go ahead.
Sorry, just to intervene because I see the attendees. There is also Arnold's hand, Alain Verdian. So maybe after Aram, we give floor to Arnold.
Sure, yeah.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Great. Well, I've been like really emotional in the past couple of weeks since the sentencing hearing. I'm not even sure where to start, honestly. I just want to say that I have been really feeling disconnected from everything on an emotional level after what I heard after the 15 years announcement. It's really painful to see somebody who has done nothing but just advocate for peace and advocate for ending something as catastrophic as a war to be sentenced to 15 years in prison, which, you know, as Meta mentioned, this is about normalizing the war, right? So the normal condition is the war, the abnormality is peace. And if you're arguing for peace, you're arguing for abnormality, you're arguing to break the status quo. And I think this is what's happening here. I think the persecution of peace activists actually in both countries and actually anywhere in the world, right? In the persecution of peace activists and anti-war activists has been like a recurring theme, and I think this is a continuation of that same theme. Of course, in each part of the world, you have various, you know, the circumstances that are specific to those. But to me, this is a continuation of a larger issue that we're having where war and destruction is normalized, and the opposition to war and destruction is seen as something abnormal and apparently traitorous. So, right, you're like, it's treason. So the charge is treason. Because somehow if you're opposing war, you become a traitor. And I think the question is, well, what exactly are you betraying, right? So I don't know, I have been really, it's been really difficult to kind of understand where we go from here. I'm very happy to hear everyone speak. I think hearing everyone share their thoughts and their strategies and their hopes and dreams that they have in mind here in this call gives me a lot of strength, in the sense that you know, I don't feel as isolated. I think a lot of the time when people are persecuted for speaking out against war or speaking out against repression, you know, also like generally the goal is to isolate. And I think us standing together, I think us standing united is a very important, I guess, step against that isolation. Because repressions and, you know, repressions and persecutions want you to feel isolated. They want you to be alone. They want you to feel like there is no hope. And, you know, Marina mentioned that, you know, by persecuting Bahruz, you know, by prosecuting Bahruz, actually, right, and imprisoning him, they're also imprisoning hope. And I think it's important to have hope within ourselves as well, so that Bahruz doesn't lose hope either. I will be happy to also discuss. I'm not very good at strategies myself, but I will be very happy to discuss various strategies of how we can, you know, get him out, and also how we can continue the work that he was doing to basically not lose hope. Because if we do lose hope, then everything is lost, you know. Hope, I feel like at this point, at this stage, after 30 years of this disastrous conflict, hope is all we have left. And I also want to mention, kind of coming back to what Sevinch was saying, that yes, the peace activism, NGO level peace activism, and state level peace activism as well, like all of them have been very disconnected. And it's also a recurring theme from the public, from the general public. I think Bahruz was kind of an exception, or at least trying to be an exception to that rule. And I think in one of his articles, he actually did mention that a lot of this NGO level activism, for example, was especially like pre-2020, it was like, you know, like centered around like people from Yerevan and Baku, young people who speak English from Yerevan and Baku. And I think it took a lot of like insight to understand this and address this. And I really appreciate it. I think like my first memory of, because I've never seen him like in person, but there have been a couple of panel discussions. We've been together, and he was just, I always liked what he was saying about the Karabakh War. And that was kind of my first memory of reading his article and being like, yes, this is a very important point. And this is someone who understands how this works. I think his insights on the conflict were always valuable. And I think we should also like maybe read what he was writing, and also maybe also discuss his views as well, so that his views also don't get lost, because I think that's also another one of the goals, you know, just to kind of disappear what this person was saying. So yeah, I think sharing his articles again would be a good idea. Yeah, I know this is incoherent. I've been trying to find a coherent way to express what I was feeling for weeks. I wasn't able to. I just think, to me, it's important that we don't lose hope, that we stick together, that we reevaluate and continue to evaluate our friendships that we have, our personal and professional relationships that we have, and the solidarity that we have with each other and with Bahruz. It's harder to break something when the parts of that something are sticking together. So yeah, like I guess that's all I want to say, and I'm very, very happy to see all of you here.
Thank you, Aram. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your insight. And also the suggestion that we should share Bahruz's writing, because indeed Bahruz really wrote a lot about the compassion, about what does it mean to do peace building, and also a lot of criticism of actually what was there. So quite a critical mind Bahruz was. We are all familiar, and quite a radical mind to some extent, which is why I think it is a threat to the regimes that cannot control it, because project level peace building, maybe they can control, but people like Bahruz, they know that they cannot control because he's a free thinker. And I think I have a few people in line now. What I will do, I think we promised Arnold to go next. So Arnold, please, you can open your mic and speak briefly.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Great.
do.
Yeah, first of all, I want to thank you for convening this webinar. Unlike most of you, all of you, I actually never got to see Bahruz in person, but I got in touch with him. It was, I believe, during or after the war, and there's so many things I think. Well, what makes him unique is just a combination of, first of all, he's a person of such principle. His values, his principles, it's something that makes you adore him. In some ways, he's very courageous to sticking to values and principles and speaking truth to hate, truth to power. And on the other hand, he's also very, very intelligent guy, as anyone who knows him knows. So much passionate. So I mean, there's just so many things about him that, even having not met him in person, we only have, I believe, one Bahruz in the Caucasus, and we really can't afford, I think, these circles of peace building and civil society. It's just not the same not to have a person of his caliber with us. So yeah, so I want to keep it short on my end, because some of you have, of course, a lot more history with Bahruz, but yeah, I just can't believe like the recent news about him, and but I hope, and I'm sure I will see him a lot sooner than that, hopefully. So yeah, I just wanted to keep it at that.
Yeah, thank you, Arnold. Thank you very much for your comments, for your thoughts. Flora, I think I'll give the floor next to you, please.
Yeah, thanks. Can you all hear me? Yeah, so I don't even know from where to start, because like as many of you, I'm just like frustrated and very, very angry. But maybe some points will be repetitive, but the first thing that I want to say and I want to declare is that we need to demystify the fact that Armenians and Azerbaijanis are not friends, or we cannot be in the same place, because like, I heard a couple of people saying that like in the stages, etc. Because when we are phrasing it in this way, we are just fueling the dictatorship machine, right? More often than not, actually, I have met Azerbaijanis who have become more closer friends to me than Armenians outside of Armenia, right? And this was before the 2020 war, during the 2020 war, and after. And Bahruz was actually one of these Azerbaijanis who I met way before the 2020 war. We met in the university when I didn't even know what is the civil society. I was not part of it. So like, you know, there was no peace activism involved or like, you know, anything. We just were in the same university, and then not only him, like, you know, there was a full gang of like 10, 20 Azerbaijanis who were students in that year. And I was constantly hanging out with them. So like, I just want to demystify this. We can exist with each other. We existed with each other, regardless of the dictatorship propaganda, and we are going to exist with each other. So just like, you know, that that perception of us that like, you know, we are dangerous in the same room together is actually a myth. It was never like that, and it's not gonna be like that. And second of all, I don't know, like, yeah, I also want to keep the hope. But then again, we know the world that we are living in. We thought that 2020 war was horrible. What happened to us, to Armenia and Azerbaijan and Caucasus? Now we are seeing that the world is going even more crazy, right? So what is there that we can do? Like, you know, hope is gone, hope is dead. We see the white supremacy rising, you know, like the whole unfairness, the broken democracy, like, you know, the value of democracy that doesn't exist anymore. So, and actually what I came to realize, actually, it is in these times that we all need to be thinking like Bahruz is thinking, because it's not about, as you said, like, you know, many of you mentioned, it's not about the project, it's not about like, you know, the organized piece. It has to be just like free thinking people, because this is something that is beyond this democracy that was drafted. It's beyond any statement, it's beyond any project. So, yeah, I mean, I am actually here. I am going to fight for Bahruz and for any of my Azerbaijani friends, and I can openly and like proudly call everyone my friends. Like many names I'm recognizing here, those names that I don't know, like, you know, regardless of what the dictator is saying. So I'm just, yeah, really thankful that this was organized, and I hope that there will be a point where we will continue strategizing. But the most thing that I'm really, really now feeling frustrated is not about us, because like you see, we could self-organize ourselves to meet, at least to talk about what's happening. What is frustrating me is that those people who were kind of behind, like, you know, the say the elite level of the peace building, I don't see any of these names here. Many times, if you are looking on the Azerbaijani state narrative interviews, like, you know, Bahruz has been seen, pointed here, Bahruz was meeting this person here and there, and these are all the European conferences, webinars, workshops organized by the people who are absent here, right? So I think the number one thing that needs to be done is to pressure these people. Like, we are not pawns, right? We are not just tags that you can, like, you know, check at the time that you need us and then forget about this and not even show up when we need the support. So I don't know if the right strategy is boycotting them or the right strategy is actually pushing them to do something. And I don't know, I have been sharing this story a couple of times also, like in these places where we kept meeting and, like, you know, from where they actually got the idea that Bahruz might be a traitor. It's also the institutions where we have been studying. So I really, really, what we can do is put pressure on all of these places to act, to say something. Like, even we know, like, you know, their voice might not change anything, but I want them to speak now. I don't want them to keep the default good relations with, like, you know, the upper state in Armenia and Azerbaijan and leave somebody in prison for 15 years. So yeah, again, like as Aram said, it's really hard to keep your thoughts organized because, like, it's just anger. Like, there is nothing else to say. I'm angry on everybody and everything that is going around. I'm angry on people who are not here, really. And like, I don't know how you guys are going to do. I'm just going to keep boycotting and reminding them that they were not there when we needed them. And if they want us, they have to be there for us. Not just, like, you know, on attack, like as an announcement in the beginning and in the closing of the events that let's think about our Azerbaijani friends, because that's not really caring. And really, like, whom we are going to blame for this, right? It's not Bahruz's fault that he's in prison. He has been studying in the educational centers, which were valuing this democracy, this peace, right? And when you are writing to these institutions, they are keeping silence. So I think like what we can do as people who are here, I see like around like 30, 40 people, right? So we just need to keep pushing others who have maybe more power than us to do something. In the meanwhile, just like, screaming, shouting, and not forgetting about any second that Bahruz is being in the prison, because his hunger strike is our hunger strike. His attempted suicide is an attempted suicide of all of us, really. So yeah, I just want, I really am begging everyone here and those who are not here, every second of your day, just keep thinking about the fact that one of us is in prison. And if we are not doing anything, tomorrow it's going to be all of us, regardless on which side of the border we are. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Flora. I really, really appreciate how you pointed out different actors who have been complicit to some extent into creation of the structure that now enables these regimes, these dictators, to imprison whoever they want. Of course, we are familiar that imprisonment of Bahruz comes on the background of imprisonment of nearly 400 political prisoners in Azerbaijan. So it's way much more structured than just peace activism, but specifically him being punished for so many years is an intention to crack completely the alternative peace process that we are trying to create. And I think this is, as you mentioned, and I really, really want to emphasize on this, that liberals in their liberal rooms, they tried to do things and they failed. And authoritarians in their authoritarian illiberal rooms, in their negotiations, they also failed. So the alternative third way needs to be here, and we are that third way, we are that third room, and that's why we create this room, and we will create more and more rooms as spaces, because the liberals will never leave their comfortable rooms, conference rooms, I don't know, panel rooms, whatever, and the authoritarians will never leave their elite rooms and wealth and everything. So it's now up to us to actually fight for our own spaces, yes, and for Bahruz, of course. I want to give floor to Ram. Ram, please, would you like to comment?
Yeah, thank you, Sevinch. Well, it's really hard to say stuff, but first of all, I would like to say everyone that please let's don't talk about Bahruz in the past tense, because he's still alive and he's fighting for all of us, but also for himself. I'm to be very honest that I've known Bahruz since 2016, and to be honest, despite our differences, we have never seen the things eye to eye, and I disagree with a lot of things Bahruz has done, to be honest. But at the same time, I also believe that nobody should be imprisoned for demanding peace and justice, particularly in our region, and particularly within this geopolitical scene. And Bahruz has always been critical on certain topics. I totally agree. And but also the question of what is peace and how Azerbaijani state defines peace is the question here. And I think more or less people who are in this panel, I believe they don't accept the ongoing peace talks as a real solution. And Bahruz is one of us as well. But because of refusing this, he's being arrested. And it's not only Bahruz. We know that the entire situation in Azerbaijan is on a completely different level, and the crackdown is much of by the journalists and people. But I also would like to bring it to another point that Flora also addressed, but I also would like to bring the European hypocrisy. I mean, of course, we can blame Azerbaijani government for others and others, but my point here is, as someone living in Europe for years, that I start to understand that when we are needed as tokens for certain projects to write, to research, we are always supported. But once we are in different complicated conditions, like Bahruz is, suddenly there is silence. There's the elephant in the room. And particularly in Bahruz case, despite the fact that I have several times, I also worked at Charles University, and Bahruz was also doing her PhD there. And several times we have reached into the Vice Rectorate, and also the faculty members. They haven't taken any prominent steps, or they haven't even taken any steps in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to pressure the Azerbaijani state. Since Bahruz is one of their students, they're obliged to protect him. But the university has done nothing. And continuously, the other institutions Bahruz has been as a visiting researcher or visiting intern, none of them have taken any substantial steps in protecting him either. So my question here comes to the point that if we are working with these institutions, and if we are producing our own research, what is the aim of collaborations with such institutions? I think this imprisonment of Bahruz perfectly shows us that we must continue being independent researchers and not associate or affiliate ourselves with such institutions, because they will never help us. And we also see this in their hypocrisy. So Bahruz has been sentenced for 15 years, and none of these institutions made a statement about that. The same way I'm talking here to Bahruz PhD supervisors, none of them has raised this issue within the institution. Why? Why should we come here and talk, but not them? And also, in the very same way, all these European institutions that the Azerbaijani state accuses Bahruz with, which Bahruz apparently collaborated and did traitor stuff, why none of them also show up here? I mean, these are the questions from my side to think, because we see democracy is failing, and within these failing democracies, we also realize that the Western global North narratives don't really want to care about what is happening to people in the post-Soviet space, in particular in Soviet countries. And I think Bahruz's current struggle is a perfect example for this narrative, that we witness yet another dismissal or rejection, not from only Azerbaijani side, but also from the global north. Thank you.
Thank you, Ram. Thank you so much for this critical overview and of the framework you're bringing. I just want to mention that I know it's not a lot, but Charles University recently, just 3 days ago, on the 24th of June, they issued a statement. The dean of the faculty where Bahruz was, they basically issued a short statement in support of Bahruz. It's really recent. Of course, it's important, but it's not disseminated. We don't see it visibly. So I understand, Ram, that when you mentioned that
I think this happened. I think this happened after I wrote a message to them and I tagged them, all of them. And I think after this day, I didn't know about this. I think I posted about this and I wrote to them, and then I guess this is at least they put a statement. But I hope they will put more pressure on the Minister of Foreign Affairs, because Bahruz holds the residency permit from Czech Republic, and I think the university must take some steps to bring him back.
Right. Yes, absolutely. I think you and Flora share the same vision in terms of pushing, and I agree that these institutions who were once hosting Bahruz and Bahruz is still affiliated with some of them, they should of course step in and show a position, a much stronger position, of course. Thank you, Ram. And I have Christina, Lala, and Samira. Which one of you would like? Christina, yes, please.
Yes, can you hear me? Hi, everyone. Well, I am here to express my solidarity with Bahruz and everyone that is imprisoned or harassed or attacked because of their position against war machine and war industry. And I absolutely share the sentiment how surreal it is that that's the abnormal desiring peace for your society. I know Bahruz for probably over 5 years. We were never close, to be honest. I don't have any nice stories about me and Bahruz, but something that I always remember, that he's a very strong voice. He's a brilliant mind. But something that is being questioned now, sometimes, I don't know why I do it, but reading comments, under this post is questioning his intention. That's something that is nonsense. That's something I've always admired, was his intention, which was an intention of care towards his own society. And he had enough care, he has enough, care in him, not only for his, but also for the Armenian society. And I think that's something we all, share when you put the society and the lived life at the center of your care. That's the central value you have. That's how you just step by step get into, here. When you value security and justice for your people, for yourself living in this region, you start to also value opportunities to engage in dialogue, to start to understand each other. And I think for some people probably looking from side think that, this is kind of some, romanticized way of thinking about it. But if, in any discussion, if you get into details, all of us will, and it was with Bahruz as well, you would disagree on so many details, on so many points. But I think what is being questioned, what is being limited by wars and by authoritarian, schemes and tools, is the limit of thinking, the thinking itself. It's not just about a certain ideological position, but at some point it becomes a fear of just thinking in general, because when the norm is so limited and the guidelines are so vague, you start to just avoid thinking, just in case you might have a incorrect thought. And that's something what does the authoritarian system right now, and the structures, actually systems we live in, by the harshness of the punishment towards Bahruz itself, is the way of punishing and spreading that fear of thinking. And I don't want to take too long, and I really share, all thoughts that were said today. I could sign under them, but something also is that needs to be spelled out. I think that this is also a challenge, an attack on academic freedom. And this is something that is beyond, a local issue of Azerbaijan, or of the region. That's something absolutely beyond that question. And I think that's also need to be spelled out and, as part of, action plan. And I'm glad that some of you already start discussing about next steps. And I hope we can also conclude today with that. What can we do realistically to support us in prison, to support Bahruz, but also to keep going, trying to stretch away that limits of what's allowed to be thought and be spoken.
I think it's your turn, Lala.
Oh, it's
I'm
me?
after you.
Okay. Yes, okay. Well, thank you all. First of all, I really want to thank Armenian colleagues and say how much I appreciate that you mentioned how you met Bahruz and how your ties started, because this is precisely what Bahruz was framed with, that he worked for some security services or like some espionage people from Armenia. And I think this poll and the people here really do clarify that we are ordinary people from Armenia and Azerbaijan, And Bahruz was one of us, basically, and it's not a crime to talk to each other and be in connection with each other. So first of all, thank you that all of you mentioned it and all of you clarified the situation. I think it's important. Second, I think I am as much angry as Flora and Ram to liberal institutions. I think it's very easy to be angry on Azerbaijan and social and everything. It's out of question. Yeah, who wouldn't be angry on fascists? But I am angry on people who pretended to be allies, and during the peacetime, without a crisis, they basically used people like Bahruz, right? Because he participated in all events, he was quite active or in connections with these institutions. And when the crisis came, they basically went silent and abandoned the colleague, the friend, who they had to be together, who they had to show the solidarity actually in the moment of this crisis, not abandon them. So I am as much angry as all of you, and I think we should also hold them accountable. They should realize their complicity, and they should realize why their peace building and their framework failed and continues to be failed. And I think what they can do now, the best, is stay away and don't corrupt people and corrupt people who want to be, as we are here, independent and do our work together without these institutions. And along with this anger, I am also very much proud of us, and I have a lot of hope seeing these people coming together without any institution, without any help, grassroots, self-organized, and talking and standing together, showing solidarity. This gives me enormous hope. And I think hope only is created through actions, and this is one of the actions that we do together today. Coming to Bahruz, of course, Bahruz was a dear friend, and of course, it pains me what happens to him right now, and he's in prison. And I honestly feel the guilt that he's in prison for all of us, for all the things that we do together. It feels like he's only punished for this, and of course, it gives a lot of pain, and I'm sure it's not only to me. And I also want to draw attention to the absurdity of his arrest, because while us as individuals, when we post together, we meet, we talk, we smile, and we have photos, they are shared by Azerbaijani propaganda machines saying that you cannot do that. But when our prime ministers or president, the head of the states do that, it's absolutely normal. And no one questions that, like, what is the problem? Why do you are afraid so much of people on the ground to talk to each other? If the eventual goal is to have a peace, if the initial goal is for Armenians, Azerbaijanis to live together again as they once lived, and I want to remind that they lived for thousands of years next to each other before nation states emerged, in peace without massacres and wars. And I think this is possible, again. And the only way for me, to be honest, is the way that we are doing it. I'm really angry also on our government for all these 30 years, even more than 30 years, not allowing any of us to talk to each other, not allowing the genuine grassroots actions, mobilization to happen. And then to say to all of us that war was the only option. War was not the only option. All other options were cut from us. And of course, when all other options are cut, the only logical conclusion, I would say wrong logical conclusion that you come to is that war is the only option. Again, linking everything back to Bahruz and to us, I think what was the courageous point of Bahruz that he stand against the nationalism, he questioned the nationalism, and he wasn't silent and silently accepting the false national narratives. And this was the thing that our government and the Azerbaijani government was very much afraid of, that someone challenges independently the national narratives. I don't want to take much of your time. I just want to mention a few things. I saw in the comments that someone mentioned that please talk about Ahmad Mehmedi. He is also one of the imprisoned political prisoners, and of course there are a lot of political prisoners right now in Azerbaijan, but Ahmad was also one who spoke for peace and stood against the war. And I think this event dedicated to Bahruz specifically because of his recent sentence, but the activism for political prisoners will continue, including, of course, Ahmad and others. That's it, and thank you all again. I want to conclude that again, what we did today gives me a lot of hope. Thank you.
Thank you, Lala. Samira, please.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everybody. I really feel happy and courageous and unsafe to be in this community, within this community, and speak together about, again, the possibility of the future, peaceful future of Azerbaijani and Armenians together. And it's so pity that it is actually the voted event, the one of us, Bahruz, sentenced to the 15 years of the 15 years. So but it is also important that after even this kind of the punishment from the authoritarian regimes, still we have this courage, still we have this connection, still we have this community together, gathering together and speaking without fear, because what they want to do actually to put this peace framework that they cannot control. They cannot control by the projects, by the top-down the organizations, even by liberal peace institutions itself. For me, for example, this is not separated from what our governments want to do. That there's this kind of the peace building, the projects that were still top-down and controlled by the institutions, by the hegemonies that it could be in the face of the Azerbaijani government. It could be in the face of, let's say, EU or other hegemonic powers. They want to actually they wanted to impose their own narratives, their own point of views, how actually Azerbaijanis and Armenians have to see their future together. But what we had after Second Nagorno-Karabakh war, this anti-war, no-war community, like we were mostly self-organized without any institution, without like under the roof of any institution, any projects, and just speaking through our conscience and our values, our moral values, and our ideologies that came all of us together, and dare to imagine alternative future, the peaceful future to our communities, because these two our societies, because these two countries were subjected many years, many kind of the massacres, troubles, sufferings, and the genocides, and the very much colonial disruptions on their lands, on their societies. So, but what we are actually witnessing, that they try to put another wound on this wounded body to heal. Actually, they are claiming that they want to heal, they want to make a peace, but the putting another wound on this wounded body in the both sides never could bring a peace. And also, if you are doing all these peace negotiations for also 30 years under the behind the closed doors, and also in top level of high level of representations of this both countries, and then you when it comes to claim the justice, then you come to this society, to this people, this everyday people, just to draft them and send them to war, to fight each other. So actually, I'm bringing this point of view because to explain that why we were anti-war position at that time, and still we are in that community, and we're still claiming for this without any theoretical academic frameworks, and just very very understandable, very everyday language, that just we wanted to have this kind of the the peace negotiation or peace talks, or let's say coexistence, peace building, all this process just by people, for people, not on top down, the frameworks or the institutions, that today actually we again understand, we again witness, we again realize that all these institutions, by governments, our governments, or by the EU, I don't know, by US, whatever it was, their silence, they buried in the silence, and they didn't actually demanded and needed effort for protecting these people, and also betraying their own values. So and also being anti-war, no war, is not an isolated case for Azerbaijan, for Bahruz. I would say that the Second Nagorno-Karabakh was kind of the pioneering event, political event for what we have, what we are experienced today, this wartime, global wartime politics, and the fascistic, and the rise of the right being the rise of the kind of neo-fascist governing in the whole world. So because they first silenced what happened in that war, and then they keep their silence what happened in the Middle East, let's say, what recently happening in the all global South. So they are still keeping their silences. So this again show us that how colonial dynamics are relevant, how extension and continuity is relevant for our region also, and how still we are suffering for those, both in global colonial dynamics and also self-colonial dynamics in the face of our own regimes. So as you said, like, this is easy, of course, to blame the Azerbaijani government, Aliyev regime, and we did many times before in many, and also these repressions. I would say that this wound, for example, it's after this all ongoing, this civil society crackdown. I would say it's also extension of this victory, this consolidation of the power in Azerbaijan, that has this courage and has this kind of the power in this extent to dare to silence whole civil society and put all society under fear, under pressure, kind of governing the governing dynamics, and also taking all the social control by their hands. And so Azerbaijani sides also still suffering this. For example, all free souls, all free minds, all journalists, all academicians, I don't know, all activists right now in the jail, they are also suffering the same politics, I would say, because it's not only being anti-war now, it's not only related to Azerbaijan. They always blamed as being marginal, being a very minority in the society, but the wars continued in many places, and we see the no-war or anti-war voices and movements in very different places, in very different political context in global political climate and the landscape. So that's why we are not even as an isolated part of it. We are still the part of this global solidarity chain, and we are not less, and we will grow, we will straighten our all tools that we have. It's our voice, it's our actions, I don't know, whatever it is. So we will be, I think, together, and we will be stronger together. So that's it, I think.
Thank you, Samira. Thank you so much for this powerful message. Hermine?
Hi, everyone. Thanks a lot for everything. I remember meeting Bahruz for the first time in 2021, and I remember what he was saying about his possible arrest. He was actually saying that wouldn't happen since Azerbaijani government already did the worst thing possible for him, which was making the Azerbaijani society hating him for his speeches and his position that he's taking in with Armenians, and how he was also what was his position regarding the conflict itself. But yeah, as you were saying, we live in one society in the world where all the things and peace is abnormal. But I'm also not getting surprised, since even if we just trace the vocabulary that is being used for wars, I remember us also discussing this, that we still live in times where we continue to say war crimes when the war itself is a crime. And the real criminals are the people who are actually making the wars and creating those situations where people should hate each other, and just advocating for coexistence and peace is treason. So it's very sad that we are stuck in this reality, but we should find ways of changing this. I also remember the discussions and conversations between later discussions that we were having, people saying, is it okay actually for Armenians to show up now to talk for Bahruz and to advocate for him? I think this is the time to talk for him and to stand next to him, especially if we consider that he wrote this letter to Nikol Pashinyan asking for to release him and to help to prove that he wasn't working for Armenian government and for the state. I think the governments, both Aliyev regime, especially Aliyev regime, by charging Bahruz for treason, I think he gives too much power and importance to the state, not understanding how Bahruz himself was against the concept itself. And that's why we need to continue what is started, and we should, as Armenians, especially I'm speaking from the position of Armenia, remember that if we want to live in peace together, whatever it means, we should support the people who advocate for that, and we should not let Bahruz or any other person to stay in that prison any longer. And we should use all our possible tools to support him mentally and physically. And one of those things can be will be very powerful to write him letters, and also to push Armenian government to take action and to prove that Bahruz and other activists weren't working for the state. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Hermine. Yes, absolutely, very crucial point. Also, the fact that Bahruz is charged with treason because apparently he has leaked state security materials, and the question is, how can Bahruz release state security materials when he doesn't work for the state, when he has been living abroad for so many years? So how is it even logically possible? Yes, and I just want to say one short sentence about the clarity. So what the government is trying to do is to create lack of clarity. So we don't know what's right and wrong. And this moral unclarity, any format of unclarity, creates this hysteria around who is a threat, who is not a threat. And of course, that's how they manipulate the public opinion as well. But thank you, Hermine, for this comment. And I see Vitek has raised her hand, but Vitek, we have really short time. So may I ask you to write your comment in the Q&A, if that's okay for you? We will read it out.
In 2 minutes, say, if it is possible, because
it's very brief, yes, okay. But yeah.
So first of all, thanks very much for all your voices, and especially for Flora message. And I think what you said about this different strange peace initiatives, mediation, whatever that it was, whether it's to ignore them or to push them, I would push them and just check them. You know, it's like a check and balance a little bit, yeah. Then the second thing is there is a lot of was said about the shitting the word. It's basically it was all the time, right? And I mean, now as we are like in Poland, we feel it that there is bigger, but it was all the time. It's nothing new. And remember, there is a very strong, I think, message that was behind the Amnesty International when it was started was that, you know, it's always better to light the candle than the curse darkness. And in that case, I sent to Savinch, so to you, to the messenger, first of all, 2 small graphics, one for white and second for a black background, and what you can use with a transparent background to put it. I would encourage, I don't know, as I understand, there is not, as Caucasus Talks is a peace feminist collective, but to use all the possible resources. And also, I sent to Savinch a petition from Amnesty International about Bahruz when he was arrested last year. But of course, I think it would be very important to have this petition very directly written in the same style, because Amnesty knows how to even address dictators in a most effective way, but to use the information collected, especially by, I think, Aytan Farhadova, whose last articles somehow were giving the spotlight on details of what was going on with the sentence and with all the stuff. So just use the OC media. If you could start to have this petition, I think it would be very important to encourage everybody to use the networks. As you can see, I think from a RAM's experience, it's always good to somehow, you know, do some actions to make the university or other institutions just simply act. Yeah, so that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Vitek. Yes, thank you. I'll check your links later and I'll share it with the group for sure. And maybe with the public, we can definitely share it. And yes, there were some other petitions for Bahruz. We also started with some colleagues, some scholars. We started the scholarly support petition. It was mostly like people in the academia writing support, like signing solidarity statement for Bahruz. And I have only one person in the panel. I don't know if Sevil, if you would like to say a few words, or how do you feel? Because I see you also as a part of the panel. Sevil? Okay, I think we have lost Seville, so it's okay. What we will do now, I think it's a moment for us to finalize this amazing discussion and all these beautiful thoughts that were shared today with a statement of Azerbaijani and Armenian peace activists, of which we are, to read it out loud, to declare our declaration. Well, just to let you know that we have this declaration in few language now already prepared. And after reading out this declaration, we will share it so you can also sign up for it. What Vitek mentioned before, the Amnesty's statement is good. And besides that, there are several other statements, but this one is not just for Bahruz. It is for Bahruz, but also not just for Bahruz. It's a statement for peace, the peace deal that Azerbaijani and Armenian governments cannot agree for a long time. It has 17 articles, just like the 17 articles that Azerbaijani and Armenian government is discussing, by the way. And latest in March, they said that they cannot agree on 2 articles. The rest of 15 articles have been agreed. But we are also not, as a public, we still don't know what these agreements and disagreements are clearly. Again, uncertainty. So the uncertainty is the tool to control, and that's what they have been doing. But we are very certain, we are very clear, and we are going to be very straightforward with our 17 article peace declaration. And to read it out loud, I want to give floor to Samira and Hermina. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Savinch. Okay. In solidarity with Bahruz Samadov and a whole demand peace. We peace activists from Armenian-Azerbaijani declare the vision for just and lasting peace between our peoples. We reject state violence, nationalist propaganda, and militarized solutions. We honor the courage of Bahruz Samadov, imprisoned for demanding peace, and we affirm that peace is not a crime. Our vision, like our struggle, is rooted in dignity, memory, and collective liberation. The governments of Armenia and Azerbaijan have spent years negotiating a 17-article peace agreement, yet have failed to deliver peace, leaving millions of people trapped in uncertainty, fear, and propaganda. In response, we present our 17 articles, not of diplomatic deadlock, but of radical hope. shared grief, and collective liberation. While they negotiate behind closed doors, we speak publicly and defiantly. Our peace is not a geopolitical performance, it's a people's demand. We are not two sides, we are many people oppressed by the same systems, war profiteers, patriarchal rulers, oil-funded autocrats, imperialist powers, and nationalist ideologies. Article 1, we demand immediate peace. We demand an end to hostilities, militarization, and nationalist hate speech. We reject all forms of militarized peace. We do not want silence enforced by military force. We want liberation. Article 2, freedom for Bahruz Samadov and all political prisoners. We demand Azerbaijani government to immediately and unconditionally release Bahruz Samadov and all political prisoners jailed for promoting peace and human rights. Repression of dissent signals refusal of dialogue and participation of the people in the peace-building processes. Releasing unjustly detained political prisoners, on the contrary, signals the willingness to enter dialogue, allowing space for critical thought. Without those voices, any peace deal is doomed to fail. Article 3. No peace without justice. True peace must be reckoned with past violence, displacement, and silencing. We call for trust-telling processes, memory work, and justice for all victims, Armenian, Azerbaijani, and others. There can be no healing while denial is a policy and while the pain of entire communities is erased or instrumentalized. Article 4. Peace must be anti-imperialist. There can be no peace as long as Russia, Turkey, Iran, the European Union, and the United States of America treat the South Caucasus as a chessboard. We reject all imperialist interests. Imperial powers thrive on our divisions by fueling conflict, backing dictators, and profiting from our displacement. Our lives are not bargaining chips. Article 5. Peace must be anti-capitalist. Capitalists profit from our blood, weapons, steel, pipelines, construction contracts. This is the economy of death. The aftermath of war and ethnic cleansing in Nagorno-Karabakh, companies like Anglo-Asian Mining and EU-backed green energy ventures have rushed into exploit newly emptied lands and branding dispossession as development. Solar panels now stand where people once lived. This is not peace, it is extractive colonialism. We want an economy of care, not conquest. Open Article 6, open all borders. We call for demilitarized open borders that enable free movement, exchange, and mutual care between communities. We demand the opening of all borders, not for tanks, but for people. We support free movement for all, regardless of passport, ethnicity, or language. Article 7. Demilitarize our societies. We oppose military buildup, conscription, and war economies. Investment must go to healthcare, education, culture, and environmental restoration, not weapons. We demand the removal of militarist ideology from our schools, media, and public life, where it trains generations to obey, fear, and hate. Article 8. Mutual recognition of suffering. We honor all lives lost in wars, pogroms, blockades, and forced displacements. We do not compare pain. We call for spaces where alternative imagination of a shared future is possible, based on mutual grieving and remembering of the past with a trajectory of looking forward to a co-created future where our people are not threatened by new cycles of violence. Yeah, I think my part is done, and now Hermina could continue.
Article 9. End of war economy. Military service, fossil fuel extraction, and nationalist propaganda are forced onto youth because elites fear educated, organized, disobedient generations. We reject this future. We want life, not service. Instead of creating new cycles of violence that bring suffering to our people, the governments must cooperate for the search of missing persons from the wars of 90s and 2000s and supporting the victims. Instead of investing in arms and weaponry, funds must be aimed at reconstruction, financial support of those people who have suffered directly, and social healing. Article 10, transnational solidarity. We stand in solidarity with peace movements across the region, including in Turkey, Iran, Russia, facing repression for opposing war. We demand the protection of anti-war voices everywhere and commit to build alliances that defy borders, dictators, and empires. Article 11, no to ethnic cleansing. We condemn all forms of ethnic cleansing, past, present, and future. Everyone has the right to live in safety, dignity, and cultural belonging. We denounce the current ethnic cleansing of Armenians from Nagorno-Karabakh and demand accountability, protection, and the right of all displaced communities to return or rebuild freely. Article 12, no monopoly over grief. We mourn the cultural erasers and silences of Baku, Yerevan, Ganja, Nakhchivan, Sumgait, Khojali, and so many others. No government has a monopoly on grief. We refuse to let our pain be weaponized for nationalist agendas or used to erase the suffering of others. We will not be manipulated by selective mourning. Article 13, support return in dignity. All displaced persons, including Armenians from Azerbaijan, Azerbaijanis from Armenia, and the people of Nagorno-Karabakh, must have the unconditional right to return, remain, or resettle elsewhere with dignity, security, and reparations. Article 14, create joint peace education curriculum. We call for an end to state propaganda in textbooks and the creation of shared Armenian-Azerbaijani platforms for peace education, history dialogue, and language learning. We insist on community building, especially in border territories, and digital initiatives that foster connection, empathy, and critical thinking beyond borders and official narratives. Article 15, defend environmental peace. We condemn the ecological destruction caused by war, militarization, and extractivism. The devastation of land, water, and air threatens all communities and future generations. We demand joint Armenian-Azerbaijani environmental monitoring, protection, and restoration of shared ecosystems, rejecting profiteering from nature's ruin. Peace must include the healing of our earth. Article 16, feminist peace now. We commit to peace as feminists against militarism, patriarchy, and state violence. Patriarchal nationalism is the root of war. Masculine fantasies of domination fuel every war. We reject all the cult of the strong leader and hero soldier and sacred land. Feminist peace begins with dismantling patriarchy and recognizing how the bodies and minds of our people are governed through state-led production of war narratives. Article 17, our struggle is global. From Palestine to Sudan, to Kurdistan, to the South Caucasus, we are part of our struggle. One struggle. We reject all forms of colonialism, racism, and imperialism. Peace is internationalist, or it is a lie. For the disappeared, the displaced, the imprisoned, the murdered. For those who build underground networks of trust in silence and in fear. For those who refuse to be enemies. We are the future they try to bury. We are growing back together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ermine and Samira, and everyone who participated today. For us, it's really important that we disseminate this declaration, and anyone who is willing to sign under it, please do so. We also received some comments about the declaration, which we will consider and change some wordings, so you can always comment on it, and it's open, so we can always work on it and even make it more stronger. And there is a link in the chat, in the Q&A, Lala shared, to the message of Arnold. So if you just click on the link, you will find this declaration, and then you can just sign under it. We will collect all the signatures and later publish it. So, and you can feel free to share it with your collectives, with your groups, with your communities. And
so sorry, just to add, the signatures are also public in the description. If you click, there is at the end a link, so they will see it automatically.
Automatically change. Oh, perfect, amazing. I think to conclude today's discussion, today's campaign, we would like to also call for certain actions that already was mentioned today by people here. And of course, one of the things I think from the start, Mete mentioned about it, about the care for someone who is in prison. I think this is really, really important for Bahruz to feel that he's not alone in prison. So you can always send him letters, always send him books, anything that will motivate him and encourage him while he's between these walls in the prison, so he doesn't feel isolated. So he knows that we are thinking about him and we are connected. So one of the first call for action would be to continue caring about Bahruz, thinking about Bahruz, and maybe symbolically, materially sending him something in the prison if possible. Secondly, of course, you can sign this declaration and disseminate it, which will be a really powerful act in a reminder of the desire and demand for peace in our region. Thirdly, I think it was also mentioned, people in different institutions, if you have the possibility to push for action, that would be great. So thinking about how to do certain pressure within the institutions. As we came to conclusion, I think Flora, Ram, and a few people already mentioned that this could be one of the strategies. And another strategy and another call for action could be that we all stay connected to each other and we expand this community. I think this will be the most reverse act to what the government of Azerbaijan and Armenia has been trying to do. So to respond to their fear mongering, fear creation, we do the opposite, complete opposite. We expand and we create even stronger community. So feel free to tell about this initiative for Bahruz and share it among your, again, collectives and groups. And of course, you can suggest anything. We already heard some comments in the Q&A. There are some great suggestions to do for an action, and we can definitely consider it and discuss it together. I don't know if I'm missing anything. People, just feel free if there is anything you would like to finally for call for action. Of course, mainly focusing on the release of Bahruz. So we all say free Bahruz. We are unfortunately not in the street now because we are all in different places. We could be in the street and right now shout for freeing Bahruz, but here in this online space, we all say free Bahruz. And if there is anything else you'd like to add, please feel free.
I think there are questions in the Q&A that probably we need to address. I think it's to all panelists and whoever feels it's from Nadia. Yeah, whoever wants to start.
Okay.
Let's go ahead. I don't know.
Yeah, thank you, Lala. Yeah, Nadia is asking, I've been doing activism in the US for a few years now as an Armenian organized resistance coalition, and I have to say nothing has given me as much hope as seeing you all together now and hearing all of your experiences. I'm so thankful for this work and so sorry to hear about Bahruz. He sounds like an incredible activist, and all of your personal experiences with him are so heartening, while making his arrest so much more of a loss. It's amazing that you are doing this in his honor. I have so many questions, but here are some followed by the contact info. Oh, okay. I was reading and then I wasn't seeing the questions. Okay, the questions are, activists constantly face burnout and risk arrest, but as we know, Azerbaijanis can face way worse. Was there anything Bahruz felt the need to censor out of fear of safety? How did he stay energized while facing so many hurdles? Another question is, how can we work together? We could absolutely help start an email campaign to pressure his university, but it would be so amazing just to build coalition with you. How do we work together and form mutual trust? Do you have any groups ruled by the respectful interaction or de-escalation, or do these articles also serve as a foundation? And then Nadia has shared their contact info. You are also amazing. Thank you very much for your courage and hard work. Thank you so much, Nadia. I really, really appreciate your comments and your openness for cooperation. It's really amazing. Anyone who would like to answer the questions, I think you can also see the questions in the Q&A.
I just would like to say one thing about the university. And I think more than pressuring the university, I think at the moment we naturally need to pressure the Czech government. And we also need to pressure the German government about particularly Bahruz situation. Because since Bahruz is a legal resident of Czech Republic, they need to take the official steps in protecting him and while being a student, and also the German government, because the German government is doing really big deals because of the German government at the moment, while also claiming to protect human rights and democracy in the region. So I think we need to really define the strategies rather than just pressuring the universities or institutions. I think we need to think bigger. And in this sense, I also agree, somebody wrote in the Q&A that how can we organize and what kind of protests we can make in those countries to make more visibility. And because this is not only the issue of Belarus, this is also the issue of hundreds of political prisoners in Azerbaijan.
I wanna make 2 points, just like first responding to the how they work together and for mutual trust question, and then kind of make a point about burnout, I guess. I think, it's again like another twist. It was kind of quite easy, I believe, at least in my experience, to come together with Armenians, Azerbaijanis. As a Turkish citizen, I'm a Turkish citizen. It was quite easy when we didn't have any, like our motivation was to build up like a common life for our region and peace for our region. When we have that motivation really for ourselves, it's kind of unfolds quite naturally, to be honest. And what is weird is the opposite. Like we are expecting there should be some ulterior motive, which is the case for the state and state-funded NGOs. Which that was the case for them. And I witnessed a lot of both Armenians and Azerbaijanis talking about how they were disappointed with their encounters once the clashes broke out, and how they were kind of losing all their sense of or hope in peace building and all that. So I think it's quite actually when we have really the straight or direct motivation for peace, it's kind of really easy. And just as the same way they consider Bahruz's actions to be treason, it's just like a self-reflection of their ulterior motives in both building peace, so to call, like peace negotiations, which is highly suspectable to if they really will consider peace, or in war as well. They don't really care about the Azerbaijani people returning back or anything like that. I believe they were having ulterior motives. And for the burnout, I really think, whatever we do, we need to remember that, with these kind of campaigns, there's a danger of just doing a lot in the beginning and then kind of slowly fading away and forgetting, which exactly state wants with their prison populations, especially for the political prisoners. They want ordinary people outside prison to forget them. And this happens quite a lot as well. And it's quite natural, not to judge anyone. It's just life outside prison has its own challenges as well. We try to deal with our lives as well. So I think we need to remember and remind each other all the time that as long as Bahruz is inside four walls and other peace activists, that we have some people who are really valuable put in really challenging circumstances, and we need to just continue, like not sending tens of letters in one and then kind of not do anything else, but like doing it for however it takes, however long it takes.
Thank you, Mette. Yes, I completely agree. I think consistency here is really important. So that's why we have to also coordinate among ourselves so we can carry on the support and solidarity nonstop and in consistency. I completely agree with you. Thank you for this comment. Aram?
Yes, just really quick, I just want to address a couple of questions. The first one that I want to address kind of is the question of how do you work together and like how we form mutual trust, and of course about ground rules and interaction, etc. So I just want to say, I mean, it would be unrealistic to say that there hasn't been the issue of lack of trust between Armenians and Azerbaijanis for the past 30 years, particularly because, well, they created a vacuum between these two nations for 30 years where we didn't even see each other without somehow state approval, like, or without the approval of a certain institution, sorry, being, if it doesn't matter if it's the EU, doesn't matter if it's the state, doesn't matter if it's another institution, right, that is organizing these events. So of course there are trust issues, but I think if the question is about like political activists and peace builders, I think when you have that background of understanding how military conflicts work and understanding how anti-war activism works and the principles of that particular activism, you stop seeing each other as people from both sides coming to talk to each other. You rather see yourselves as people on the same side trying to work against a military campaign that is trying to exterminate you, right? That is trying to kill you, that is trying to send you to war, that is trying to silence you. For example, and then you see like other political differences that you have. For example, in the peace building sphere right now, there is the difference of, for example, leftism versus liberalism. So I think that like from my experience, what I have noticed is that is a much more prevalent difference that creates trust issues than being Armenian or being Azerbaijani, because being Armenian and being Azerbaijani are not the only characteristics that we have as human beings. And Flora mentioned, I think it was after me, Flora mentioned as well, and I think it's really important to not also to not sensationalize the, Armenians and Azerbaijanis talking to each other, Armenians and Azerbaijanis working together. We're just two nations who actually live next to each other. We've been living next to each other for a long, long time. So it's not something sensational that we can talk to each other and work together. We've hit a rough patch and wars and military conflicts end, but both these peoples are going to stay exactly where they are and continue to talk to each other. And also really quick, I just want to also mention so to the question about like how freely we can speak, those of us who are in Armenia and in Azerbaijan, how freely we can speak. I don't know. I feel like when it comes to my experience in Armenia, of course there has been a lot of propaganda where like you're not allowed to talk about peace here as well. I would say that I can speak somewhat freely, but I think generally nationalism and militarism, whenever they have their propaganda, it always tries to censor you in all kinds of social situations. So I think we're always cautious on where we're speaking, how we're speaking. But I would say that I guess I feel much safer speaking about it after the war, speaking about peace after the war, because a lot of people were also disenchanted about this propaganda of violence and war after the 2020 conflict. That's all.
Yeah, thank you very much, Aram. I don't know if anyone else wants to answer these questions. Ram, you want? Yes, please.
I just wanted to say, add one more thing what Adam was saying, and also Flora started about like this coexisting in the same spaces. I think in the Western discourse, particularly when Azerbaijani and Armenian people who work or do projects or exist in the same spaces, this is also marked as a way of showing civilization, which is quite ridiculous because like for centuries, people who sold groceries at bazaar in Moscow, Armenians and Azerbaijanis coexisted. So the debate around what marks it as civil and Armenians and Azerbaijanis coming together, it's always seen as an intellectual act is the problematic part of it. So that's why I think we also need to normalize the fact that not all the Armenians and Azerbaijanis come together all come intellectual. So like the people who are involved in the everyday life, they don't have to be super intellectual and maintain this relationship with Armenian and Azerbaijan. So and what I want to say is that this debate what's happening here is quite inspiring and very intellectual and in favor of Bahruz, and it's very I would say rather intellectual and different group of people, but this shouldn't be seen as a wow, and also shouldn't be seen as a civilized way of Armenians and Azerbaijans coming together. So we need to, I think, really need to work on this idea that it is not something unexpected. I think they do come together in Moscow, in the bazaars, or in Krasnoyarsk in the bazaars. So, we need to demystify this whole idea. And thanks for Flora and Aram bringing this up.
Thank you, Ram, so much. I completely agree. I think one thing is, of course, certain limitations, like even this meeting is in English because we can communicate in English. However, we also would very much like to deliver this message to our respective communities in Azerbaijani and Armenian language, especially, so that we can also not be detached, just like the structures that we have been criticizing, for instance, as liberal NGOs or any other type of structures. So we have to also, I completely agree with you, rethink how to deliver the message beyond this room that we are creating, the alternative room. But it's also a hard task knowing that how much nationalism exists, as Aram also already mentioned. So there is a possibility, and now we have to think about it. So one of the first steps we will do, of course, is to translate this discussion that we have today and in Armenian and Azerbaijani and share it as much as possible, despite, for instance, Feminist Peace Collective having really limited audience and blocked website and blocked pages in Azerbaijan. But still, there will be possibility, I think, to share it among larger networks and people, basically. I completely agree with you. I think we are almost out of time, so I will close today's discussion, wrap it up by saying that thank you so much, everyone, each of you. It was such an amazing, such a hopeful discussion. I'm so happy that we all came together. I hope one day Bahruz will watch this video and will be inspired. I know he will know that our hearts are with him, and of course all the other political prisoners in Azerbaijan as well. And as long as we are here, as long as we stand, we will stand in solidarity and in our growing, stronger network. So thank you so much. And also everyone who joined today's discussion as an audience and engaged, gave all the questions, comments. Thank you so much. And please do share the voice of Bahruz and the message across your networks, your communities. Thanks a lot. Have a good night.